I'm really very appreciative of each and every one of you who have taken the time to come and to engage in an incredibly important discussion. Particularly in the last day and just over a half now, we have come together on something that is incredibly close to all of us. And while this forum is about what we might describe as education, as this discussion rightfully suggests, it's about so much more. When I hear the stories and feel the passion and the spirit, receive the wisdom and the intelligence, it strikes me when I hear a self-described young chief get up and speak with such great force and eloquence. I join in an appreciation for our leadership at moments like this. It was only really within the last few weeks that I ended up finding myself in a meeting, and I looked across the room, and sitting there was an elected council member from my own village, and it was my 26-year-old son. And when I hear the reflections about this moment and where we've come from, when I have the privilege of speaking with and learning from leaders recently elected, put in place by their people, or leaders who've been around a long time, there is no doubt about what compels us to step into situations like this or accept the responsibilities of our people. Both my parents are here, and I'm very thankful that they're taking the time. They're both educators as well. And I remember the story that I was too young to know because I was 3. And so I don't always necessarily tell it completely the way that I'm sure that it occurred, but it goes something like this. We were living in a village north of my own home territories, and there was a hiring to be done, a teacher being prepared to be sent to my village, the superintendent of the day representing an education system that there is no question in the hearts and minds of those assembled here has never had our best interests at heart, said to the prospective educator, "Don't bother going to a house it. That's my home. That's where I come from. They're killing each other off, and they won't be there within 20 years." To the credit of my parents, on hearing that sort of interaction, even though Dad was teaching at another community, he brought us straight back home, and he graduated the first group of grade 7 kids. When I hear the speeches that I do, and particularly the leadership that's already been expressed in appreciation of the women who are speaking forth here today, I can't help but look over at my auntie. Her nickname is Spuds, but I'm her nephew, and I shouldn't use Spuds. My Auntie Rebecca is a respected educator. She achieved her master's degree. She runs the education system in my village. We were around 250 people in our village when I was a kid. We must be over 1,000 now, right, Auntie? And like I hear in the stories, so often it's a story of resilience. It's about facing and overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds. These are the stories that we as executive members continue to have the privilege to hear. And all of you have come and brought these stories that you have yourself from your own territories. Councillor Ava, the likes of which you shared, and so many other over the course of this discussion. And so it's in light of this and the different perspectives that are brought, the rich diversity that we have. On a moment like this, we would gather and then we would receive an announcement. I don't know if, Harold, if that announcement that the government has made, if that's out there. We all just received this announcement. It's a re-announcement from the last budget, so it's not a new announcement. But, you know, once again, it comes at a moment when we're gathering, and we would understand that governments have their their strategies in light of First Nations. Of course, today's announcement is inadequate. Of course, it's more unilateralism on the part of government. And absolutely, it doesn't address the fundamental flaws that are being reflected in this deep discussion here about treaties, inherent rights. It doesn't reflect the fundamental notion that Ellen would remind us that the blood of our ancestors is not free. This is our reality. It's not only today, it's over 140 years of this treatment. So there isn't surprise, but thankfully there remains a resolute notion, one that I see reflected back from my own son, who at 26 is stepping into a leadership role, the likes of which I would so desperately hope would not be required, just like I hear from so many leaders here today. And yet we step into that responsibility, as I heard you, Chief, describe. Each and every one of us being prepared to do so. As we have said, and as I've said and reflected back, and as we've heard here today, government unilateralism and funding on government's limited terms is always going to fail, and we reject this approach. We have rejected it, and we continue to reject it. As we're reminding ourselves here, we have the answers in our own lands, in our territories, in our hearts. And we're compelled, all of us are, with a dedication to our children in particular. And so, when listening to this discussion, and I'm really thankful for Dolly for your volunteerism, staying up late and hearing people and then reflecting back. And Regional Chief Morley, that the space that you've helped facilitate with the Chiefs Committees and the National Indian Education Council is truly to embrace, as we're hearing here, and as Morris reflected back, a chance to bring our minds and our hearts together. And perhaps not necessarily just to create strategies, but, Councillor Ava, to dust off strategies that have been around a long time. I was asking questions of the veterans who were around the Special Chiefs Assembly back in 1991. Former National Chief Mercredi was here, and I was asking questions about that as well. And us as younger leaders, we need to understand, with the help of you who've been around longer, help us reflect back on those moments so that we might make sure that we're very clear about the foundation upon which we're moving forward. And that foundation has not changed. It's about demanding rightful implementation of treaty now, that we drive that forward. That it's also about building a movement to demand our rightful place in this land. The reflections we've heard here about empowering and supporting our people in an effort to demand our fair share. The resources are the foundation of our relationship and the foundation for the future. This is the basis of the transformation that's required, and I share in a frustration with each and every one of you, an anger about these attempts by government. One thing that we reflect when we, as I listen to other speakers self-express about feelings of anger and the way in which we would engage with a powerful force such as anger, something that's not easy is for us to reflect on the power that anger has. And the requirement for us to focus our anger, to direct our anger, and to build allies. This is the way that we can prevail. Being careful about rushing into how we give expression to it. Being focused as our ancestors always were over the course of our respective histories. We all have stories from our territories, from our elders, about the past of our nations. And so as we are being compelled here, the invitation is to continue to strengthen and reinforce the plan and effort. That's what we've come together to do. As I've expressed earlier, this forum came together completely without funding. And it's another reason to particularly thank each and every one of you. It's another example of how it is we don't have resources to organize perhaps the way that we would, or perhaps the way that we have in the past. And so each and every single one of you, whether, as was just expressed, you did fundraising to be here, thank you for taking the time to be here at such an important moment. I feel a sense of excitement when I hear all of you, when I hear our leaders, about getting to work, not about work with the government, but about the work that we have to do at home, in our own territories. There's an incredible amount of investment taking place on our lands and on our resources right now. In your own backyards, these are real issues affecting every single one of us in our homelands. It's something that's on the lap of my son. Billions of dollars in proposed mining development. Not a story that you don't understand. Each and every one of us is faced with these challenges. Our success, there's a shared notion emerging here in this forum as a part of a strategy, will be based on public education. To pull back the veil of misunderstanding that somehow a single announcement that's made by the minister tells the world that everything is okay, because it simply is not. It'll also be driven by empowering, as I've said, and as so many of you have said, our people to understand and to live day to day, every single day, with their inherent rights as Indigenous peoples, as First Nations, and to consider how we support one another when Treaty 6 children are deep in Coast Salish territory in southern Vancouver Island. I look over at Chief's leaders from Vancouver Island. Those Treaty 6 young people so far from their homes, and yet a parent so deeply concerned about supporting their very identity, and how that stretches the family and the interconnection. This has been our experience, residential schools being the most explicit expression of destruction, attempted destruction and pulling apart families, removing young people from their homes, their teachings. Stories that we heard here today about having the mouth put with toxic elements. It is about supporting one another, reflecting and respecting that deep diversity, and somehow finding a way, as Chief, you referenced, the idea of us being a family. We may be 52 different languages, but finding a way to see each other as nation or as nations. Incredible diversity that we have. And it's about building on the firm ground that we stand on. Our treaties, our rights, the rights of, like my late grandfather said, you can't ever let go of, grandson. It's also about us as an executive being clear that we are not a First Nations government. Our role, as has been said here so often, is only to support and advocate. We are not the holder of title and rights or a signatory to treaty rights. And so you've been expressing yourself so very clear, this forum is yours, that federal legislation and federal programming is not our process and not our answer. In the end, the work then returns back to its most important and most foundational aspect. It's about our people. It always has been, it always must and will be about our people. Every single one of us and everyone back home is being reflected back here in this discussion that we have to accept our responsibility for our inherent rights. Every nation will express their position, and this is fully and absolutely respected and necessary. At the same time, our work here is also to support one another. The work, important work in Treaties 1 to 11, the movement, the pre-Confederation treaties, the agreements that have been forged in the Yukon where there's outstanding challenges there. I'm really appreciative of all of your words and of the energy that's being brought to bear here. A refresh and a refocus about our foundational aspect of our work. I believe we can resolve not to react to government, but to stand firm in solidarity of our rights. This is our work. And building a strategic plan to do exactly that in every single one of our communities. around our language, our culture. Where I think about Chief Muskokamans, his innovation, where he now has got this notion where generations will be supported with post-secondary education. Yes, you keep pushing for governments, but he's found a way forward. And there's so many other innovations that we've heard about here that we've had in exchange and support of information about success in ways that despite the lack of support, First Nations are succeeding and young people are graduating from institutions of higher learning, but are doing so while at the same time staying connected with their ancestry, learning their language, making sure their teachings remain strong. It helps to remind us in a moment like this that governments, as is expressed in this press release they came out with today, is not going to provide the answer. And it just affords more proof about that. We've been at this a long time as First Nations. We've had many pass on, ancestors who carried on this struggle. We have young people stepping forward today saying they are prepared to continue this. I just wanted to express my deepest appreciation and thanks for the wise leadership that's being provided, both in the past as well as in moments like this. I do believe this is a moment to seize our responsibility, to seize our agenda for our people. There is no question that the foundation of education, the foundation upon which governments continue to act unilaterally, is based on a false premise of who we are. As Ellen rightfully reflected, I asked my dad that when I was a kid. How come, Dad? Why? Why is it like this amongst our people? Why the suffering? And he would express back to me the history of colonization in this land. But he also reflected more deeply. He says, you know, this is not just Canada. This is happening in all parts of the world. People are being killed in South America as we speak, he would tell me as a kid. And so the words of people like yourself, Ellen, and others are so full of the powerful truth that those elements of us being savages, those elements are still found in the behaviors of governments. They're still found in the shelves, in the halls of learning, in learning institutions across this country. They're found in the behavior in the mainstream economy. That is the struggle that we've been involved in for so long, that our people have been involved in. So I also wanted to take a moment to thank my own parents, to thank those who came before them. My dad bore the brunt of so much of what we're talking about here. And so I have to speak as well as a son and as a nephew, thanking my own family for what they've endured in their own lives. And I know each and every one of you have people in your lives that you're thankful for as well. So I wanted to offer some thoughts, knowing that we have both the balance of today and tomorrow. Let's continue to build this powerful strategy that will support our people both now and far into the future. That will suggest that when the time came, when the threats were before us during our time, that we stood up and we did what was necessary for our people. I know that this conversation will continue, and I've been so thankful to be able to listen in, and this press release came that I felt compelled to reflect back on the frustration and the anger towards governments who continue to treat our people with such disregard and disrespect. So let's continue to build our plan based on who we are and where we come from. Let's continue to challenge ourselves to follow the instructions of the elders. Hope beats that, umatukwatasnish, ha hopes that, to truly support one another and help one another out. I think that's what I've heard here as well over the last day and a half. So, Harold, I think I went over 5 minutes. I'm sorry. You should have just poked me. But I am looking forward to hearing more of this discussion and building this strong strategy together. The whole intention, as a concluding thought, was to bring our hearts and minds together and then bring whatever suggestions we may have forward to the Special Chiefs Assembly in December, that we take this a step at a time. Not only talk about what's not working, focus on understanding that, but talk about what we need to do to make the changes that are required for our people now and into the future. Thank you.